College, Cooch Behar, West Bengal. Today we have with us our distinguished speaker, Dr. Siddharth Bhattacharya, Professor, Department of Computer Science and Engineering, Christ University, Bangalore. Now, Cooch Behar Government Engineering College is a new entrant in the field of technical education in West Bengal. It started its journey in 2016 under the Director of Technical Education, Higher Education Department, Government of West Bengal. It has 5 departments for BTech courses: Computer Science, Electronics and Communication, Electrical, Civil and Mechanical Engineering. Within 4 years, it has come to the limelight of technical education in West Bengal. Now, before starting the inaugural session, I would like to convey important announcement to all the participants of this webinar. For smooth running of the program, please keep mute your audio and video during the entire session of the webinar. Unless the speaker asks any, our earnest request is to however, we encourage ask questions or queries through chat box. During the question answer session at the end, we will put forward the relevant questions to the speaker. And a feedback in the chat box at the end of the webinar. Please don't forget to submit the feedback form. E-certificate will be provided to participants' registered email ID within 2 weeks. So that's the announcement. And now coming back to our inaugural session, we have with us our Honorable Head of the Department, Dr. Saurabh De, Associate Professor, Department of Computer Science and Engineering. He is also the convener of this webinar. Now I would like to request Dr. Saurabh De to introduce the speaker and to welcome all the participants and speakers. So that's all from my end. So Dr. Saurabh De, please continue.
Good morning, dear participants, the honorable speaker and my dear colleagues. It is a great pleasure for me to extend to all of you a warm welcome in this one-day national level webinar on Introduction to Computing on behalf of the Department of Computer Science Engineering of Cooch Behar Government Engineering College, in short CGEC. It is an honor for us to organize a webinar. As Dr. Odhikari said, it is a very new college and it wants to become a center of excellence. For this, to achieve this goal, our department has taken an initiative. And in this COVID situation, we want to organize a webinar. And to do this webinar, we requested Professor Dr. Siddharth Bhattacharya sir, and he gave his consent. Today we have Professor Bhattacharya sir with us to make this webinar a great success. So Professor Dr. Siddharth Bhattacharya completed his PhD in Computer Science and Engineering from Jadavpur University, India in 2008. He is the recipient of the University Gold Medal from the University of Calcutta for his masters. He is the recipient of several coveted awards. He has been appointed as the SEM Distinguished Speaker for the tenure 2018 to 2020. He has been inducted into the People of SEM Hall of Fame by SEM USA in 2020. He is also the Fellow of AET UK. He is currently serving as Professor in the Department of Computer Science and Engineering in Christ University, Bangalore. He is a co-author of 5 books and co-editor of more than 60 books and has more than 300 research publications in international journals and conference proceedings in his credit. He has been a member of the organizing and technical program committees of several national and international conferences. He is the founding chair of several international conferences. He is the associate editor of uh, associated several reputed journals, including Soft Computing, IEEE Access, etc. He is also the editor of different international journals. His research interests include hybrid intelligence, pattern recognition, multimedia data processing, social networking, and quantum computing. These are the few lines, very few lines of Bhattacharya sir. And if you go through the whole CV of sir, it is a huge. We are very happy to get you sir in this webinar and hope all of you will enjoy the session. I am again repeating the same thing what our Udhikari sir said. I am requesting all of you, please turn off the audio and video during the session for the smooth running of the session. And if you have any questions during the presentation, please type them in the chat box. We will bring them up after the presentation, and we will also have time for questionnaire session at the end. And after this, I request Siddhartha sir, to start his session and enlighten us on the field of quantum computing. Sir. Siddhartha sir, hello.
Hello, am I audible to all of you?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Audible.
Yes, sir. Audible.
Am I audible to all of you? Hello?
Yes, sir. Audible. Yes, sir. Audible.
Yes, sir,
You can
audible.
proceed.
Yes, sir.
You can
audible.
proceed.
Yes, sir.
There was a problem with the microphone. So thank you, Dr. Day, for the general introduction about myself. I find several of my colleagues and my scholars over here. In fact, to be frank, given the time schedule, I couldn't manage to prepare the PPT myself. But one of my scholars rather, PhD scholars, Mrs. Tulika Dotto, is there in the participant list. She is hearing this, and I have borrowed from him one of her slides to do away with this presentation. Anyway, let us start now. It's not enabling me to present it. How can I present? There's no presentation option. Hello.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
The presentation privilege. Otherwise, I cannot present. It is not privilege. I'm unable to present it. Window is open, but then it is not allowing me to present.
Present now option is.
Yes. You are all being able to view this slide.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you very much. So you see, I'll be just giving you a gentle introduction to quantum computing, a very recent computing paradigm, which is coming at a rapid pace. Even you see, if you just go back 10 years from now, things were not so at that time because the development stage was at the physics level only, because the physicists and the other scientists were working only on the principles of the quantum mechanical principles and all these things, how they will take place. But now, given the fact that several other scientists and researchers all across the world, thanks to some Nobel laureates, they have come up and we're now in a position where you can visualize a quantum computer, maybe not at the desktop level, within the next 10 years from now. So several companies are now making claims of being established some n number of qubit like quantum machines, quantum computers, But I generally, for myself, I generally doubt them. Anyway, better to keep all those things aside. Let us now start with the main fundamental principles of quantum computing. So that is, as I move on, you'll see I'll be just going through these topics. A small snapshot of IBM Q machine, IBM quantum computer machine. Not only the exact machine, but about one simple snapshot, which often comes across in different social media now. And then we'll be just having a discussion on why do you need a quantum computer, why is it required at all in the present context, then some introduction, comparison between the classical bits or classical computers and what is the qubit or the elementary unit in the case of a quantum computer. Then comes some principles of or features of quantum computing borrowed from quantum mechanics, like quantum superposition, entanglement, all these things are there. And then we'll be just touching upon some quantum gates, similar to those which are available in the classical paradigm, like classical gates, and or not all these gates are there. But similarly, some also other gates, also similar gates are there in the quantum computing domain. And lastly, we'll be just guiding you through the IBM Quantum initiative, where you can just create an account of yourself if you're interested, and you can just log in and create some and do something from the scratch. So let's proceed. First of all, you see this is a quantum computer. It's a snapshot of a quantum computer. It is being image, which is actually copyrighted image of IBM Q, IBM quantum machine. In fact, we should always give credit to IBM for having displaying this machine, displaying this picture, because it is not copyrighted in nature. Whenever, always it is necessary for you, whenever you just take something from somewhere, any image, any text, always give credit to IBM or the particular source rather. So you see, it is quite not understandable from this figure what it looks like. Actually, you see, if you just look around and see about the history of computers, even about in the late 80s, you will find that the computers used to have the present computers in the desktop form now, or the laptops. They used to occupy a very large room. All the devices, all the different parts were assembled separately, and there were no transistors at the time. They used to rely on the diodes, and all the large diodes were there, and everything were in place, but in a single room. It would have occupied a single room. So it was not very friendly, user-friendly, not very portable, nothing like that. But as time went on, people just came up with the miniature versions, and now we have a laptop. We have not only a laptop, but a smartphone where some computing can be done. So things are now getting smaller. Things are now getting smaller because of the fact that we are now able to now integrate more and more number of components or electronic components or devices in the integrated circuit. So as we just go on making them more and more dense, we have already gone through this this voter card registration. So whenever we went to the at our times when we went to the particular election booths for registering our name for the voter card, we used to see that the computers used to be housed in some air-conditioned rooms. But now you see you can also use the computers not necessary to be in an air-conditioned room. That means things are getting more easier. But now given the present context of the quantum computing paradigm, the quantum computers like that, which we are seeing in the picture, like which has been developed by IBM Q as the demand, they are based on some superconductivity principle, which requires very, very, very low temperature. Temperature as low as that of liquid nitrogen, minus 273 Kelvin, this is the zero degree, or the universal zero rather. So it is quite difficult to maintain the temperature. Not only the temperature should be low, because you know already at a low temperature it is quite easy to manipulate the atoms and ions, because quantum computers or quantum computing phenomena are being exhibited by the ions and anions, by the manipulation of ions and anions rather than the electrons. So as you move down in the temperature scale, it is far easier to manipulate them. Not only that, apart from this, also you have to have a noise-free environment. Noise-free environment in the sense not only noise in terms of the heat and all these things, but also in terms of vibration. That is very difficult to maintain because already because it is quite difficult to maintain a very vibration-free, isolation-free environment where you can have a machine like this and where you assemble different components and the components are working smoothly. So things are not so easy as they look like, but then thanks to the eminent scientists all across the world who are working day in and day out to assemble or to make something happen. I'll be giving just another concept which we are thinking in terms of having something, because several schools of thoughts are there in regards to the quantum computing domain or paradigm. Some people are using this superconductivity principle for managing the ions and manipulating the ions at the quantum level and then trying to figure it out. But then other people also using the other mechanisms like using some optical properties, some optical phenomena. So we'll be discussing that later on, touching upon that later on, which seems to be more viable and more cost effective rather than this one. Anyway, let us move forward. Then the next question which comes to our mind, why do you need a quantum computer? Because already you have a machine at hand and machines are now only 40K in price. You can have a very good machine with 40K price and you can do anything. You feel like we be watching a movie and all this, because thanks to the different ISP providers which are providing internet at a very high speed, you can do whatever you feel like. But then why do you need a quantum computer? You see, if you just look around, you see in 1965, Gordon Moore, he was the co-founder of Intel. He forecasted that the number of components on an integrated circuit would double every year. Because I told you just now, the philosophy was to enable to integrate more and more number of devices in a chip. So as you can do that, things are becoming smaller. And as per his prediction in 1975, whatever he predicted, it was seen that due to the technological advances, the number of devices which could be integrated together was around 65,000, an astonishing high number. Based on this, he revised his prediction and came up with something that the number of transistors on a microchip doubles about every 2 years. So the cost of computers is halved. So he revised his own law, but then people, the experts at the time, given this particular prediction, they thought that the Moore's law will reach its highest peak up to around 2020. Because after that, because if you go for adding more and more transistors, it will be very difficult to create smaller circuits, because the temperature, not only temperature, but also the different effects like Schottky effects and different dissipation of heat and all these things will take place, so that the entire circuit will not function properly. So this is the way, that is during the evolution of computers, you see you are moving fast and coming down slower, but coming down smaller. But then there is a limit. You see, if you see the figure in 1965, as per its prediction, it was 46 only, but you saw in the previous slide, it was 65,000. So it exceeded far from his prediction. Again, in 2006, the figures are given here. Although on the slide, it will be very difficult for you to go deep, but I will be sharing the slides to the convener, so you can just have them and then have a look at these figures. So as we move on, in 2016, you see the number of devices, actual devices, is higher than the predicted value. So there must be a limit. Actually, as per the prediction, there must be a limit somewhere, somehow, because you cannot, after a point, you cannot integrate more number of transistors due to different effects or different disadvantages caused. So that's why you can have something which may be an answer to the Moore's law. Since when the Moore's law is because after the limit, what do you do? If you want to have a more efficient machine or something which is far better compared to that in the present state of art. So what will you do? Quantum computers may be one of the possible solutions. But that actually is a generalized fact, because quantum computers, as you see, it is not meant to surpass the classical computer. You do not think that once upon a time, about 10 years from now, quantum computers will come, desktop quantum computers will come, and all these computers will be thrown in the dustbin. No, that is not possible. But quantum computers are meant only to do some specific task which the supercomputers are unable to do, or not unable to do, or can do that with a very that will take a long amount of time, say years to compute something by a supercomputer. That task, which will take years for a supercomputer to compute, will be done by quantum computers within a very small amount of time, say within a single day or something like that. Depends on the problem. So that means the objective is not to you put it to use to the common man. I don't know whether it will be feasible in the near future or not. But then for the time being, it is only designed. In fact, if you just study a little bit further, China itself, they are using the quantum computing principles to for the space missions, and somehow they failed in this attempt. Anyway, so these computers are generally targeted for achieving something bigger rather than having some common desktop operations. Now, let us have a brief introduction how this field evolved. It was, you see, the first proposed in 1981 by Nobel laureate Richard Feynman. So he told that quantum computers will be more efficient than the classical computers, given the fact that quantum computing principles are different from that of the classical computers. Okay. So he proposed a basic model of a quantum computer. He also predicted that a quantum computer exponentially outspaced classical computers. That was his vision. But then he was right. But I told you that the specific applications will require quantum computer, not that every applications will require quantum computer. And then in 1994, Peter Shor developed a very famous algorithm, which it is a quantum algorithm, you see. It is a quantum algorithm, not a classical algorithm, which efficiently factorizes large integers. Now, you see, if you have read or gone through some cryptographic algorithms, the cryptographic algorithms, be it RSA or any other algorithm, they depend on the factorization. They used to take into account the advantage, the fact that the factorization of very large integers, very large number is not very easy in a classical computer. It will take years or sometimes more than that to compute the factorization. But then Shor developed the algorithm, the factorization algorithm, which could factorize large integers very fast. That means you are at the risk of your cryptographic algorithm. That means the cryptographic algorithms can now be broken easily. So that is the main issue, because that then you see whenever these things come, there is some risk associated with some particular introduction of a particular computing paradigm. Obviously, the governments or the different governments or different policymakers will always think about that, because that is why I am telling you quantum computers will not be a universal computer in itself, but only targeted to specific applications. You see, I told you the last slide. You see, theoretically, Shor's algorithm is capable of breaking many of the crypto systems used today. So that is quite alarming now. And that's why people are now working on quantum cryptography. That is a different subject altogether, not within the scope of this particular lecture. But then for the purpose of completeness, I'm mentioning it. Next, you see another thing in 1996, Grover, he came up with a search algorithm, database search algorithm, having a quadratic speed up. Very fast one, okay. Any problem which had to be solved by random or brute force search could now be done 4 times faster. That means he came up with something which is faster than the presently existing techniques or algorithms for searching of a database of some, say for example, some value rather from a database. Now, with this concepts in mind, people are now working day in and day out, I told you. But then in 1998, working 2-bit quantum computer was built and solved the first quantum algorithms like Grover's algorithm or Shor's algorithm. 20 years later, it took them 20 years rather, in 2017, IBM presented the first commercially usable quantum computer. And now they are now vying or rather just competing with all the companies, big names like IBM, Google, Microsoft, all these big companies are now fighting with each other, competing with each other. Every day they're coming up with different versions of quantum computer. I don't know where they are storing this or what they are placed. Anyway, now lastly, you see on 29 September, a very late event now, 29 September, D-Wave. Actually, D-Wave was the first company who built up a workable quantum computer. D-Wave announced on 29 September 2020 that a commercial computer of 5,000 plus qubits. 5,000 plus qubits means a machine which is capable of manipulating 5,000 plus elementary units or qubits. I will be coming to qubits later on. Qubits are the elementary units of this quantum computer. So they are capable of manipulating or working with 5,000 plus qubits at the same time. So you see things are moving very fast. Maybe the very next day they will be coming up with another version, and each and everyone is claiming quantum supremacy. Now come back to the ground. Come back to classical bit. Now, what is a classical bit? You know, all of you know. If you take one bit, you can represent two numbers, 0 and 1. Similarly, if you take two bits, you can represent four numbers. Okay, 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, 1, 1. So you see, but whatever number of bits you take, always at any point of time, you can store only one value. That means either, for example, if you take one bit, you can represent that two numbers with that bit. That means one single bit, 0 or 1. But then at any point of time, a particular variable can hold only one value, either 0 or 1, not two values simultaneously. So you see, that is a problem, because at any point of time, you can have only one value to use. Be it a four bits or any other number of bits, the same thing is there. That means you can only use, or you can only avail only one single value corresponding to any number of bits you are dealing with. So the right hand side you picture, you see the 0 and 1, which is generally represented. 0 means off, 1 means on. Representation of a classical bit. Now, in contrary, if you come to the qubit or quantum bit, things are very interesting. Why? First of all, I told you the basic entity of the quantum information is the qubit, pronounced as qubit, or a quantum bit. Nowadays, they have shortened it further. Qubit, only Q and bit. You can also write qubit. Not wrong. This term was coined by Benjamin Schumacher in 1995. Now you see the difference with a classical bit is that a qubit actually is all these things which I am going to just discuss now are based on quantum mechanical principles and based on Schrodinger's inequality principle, who stated that they stated the wave particle duality. That means anything you can just, if you just until and unless you measure or rather observe a particle, it can appear both in the wave form or in the particle form. So there's an uncertainty, means Heisenberg's uncertainty principle deals with this. That is, there's uncertainty. You are not sure whether it is a particle or a wave. Okay, so you see there is a multitude of options for you. It may either appear as a particle or a wave, or maybe as a both. So there is a possibility that you can be handling both a wave and a particle together at the same time. Okay. So based on this principle, if you just think around, you'll see that quantum bits are similar. Similar in the sense quantum bits exist in two states, or can be expressed in two states. That is 0 state and 1 state. If you just hold on. It can come with a 0 state like this or a 1 state. It is not actually, you see, in the case of a classical bit, it is a value, but it is not a value, it is a state. State means whether it could be either in a wave form or is in a particle form. Whatever it is either expressed in both the states, 0 state and 1 state. And this representation is referred to as a bracket notation. Actually, it is a Kate notation. This one, if you just write like this within this symbols, if you put anything, this is referred to the Kate notation. And if you write something like this, it is bra notation. If you put together, it is a bracket notation. Okay, either notations are used anyway. So they can exist in both the states simultaneously. That means either they can use until and unless you measure it or observe it, it can appear either as a 0 or a 1 or a combination of 1 and 0. So you do not know, okay, what is the actual value rather. So similarly, if you take two qubits, it can be in 4 states. Okay. So that means you see but in either way, even in the 4 states, the 4 states can exist simultaneously. That means you can have all the 4 states exhibited simultaneously until and unless you measure it, whether in which state it is in. Once you measure the combination or the superposition, it falls into one of the states, depending on a probability. So I'll be coming to that later on. So you see, as a generalization, an n-bit qubit system can exist in 2 to the power n superposition states simultaneously compared to the classical computers, which can represent any one of the 2 to the power n states. So that is the difference. That means you are given a possibility of manipulating larger number of states simultaneously compared to the classical computer, which can handle or manipulate only one single bit or one single value at any point of time. That's why there is a scope for parallelism. You can manipulate different values in superposition in parallel. So that speeds up the entire procedure, computing procedure. This is a snapshot of the IBM Q. You see there is a 4-bit qubit system with 16 states. You see one. I'll be just coming to the later on. Any qubit can be represented as a block sphere. Okay, in a sphere rather. So it is supposed that these are vectors. Okay, so if this is one a qubit. If this is 0, 1, 0, 1 is one qubit. This may be another. This may be another. So there are 4 qubits over here. And if you if you just go for measurement at any point of time, you will see all the possible combinations coming out of 4 qubits are having the same probability. Same probability, this value, this bar graphs represent the probability values. They are at the same probability at any point of time. So until unless you do some sort of manipulation, or they are existing at the same probability. Okay. So now getting inner into the mathematics part, it is represented, I told you, qubit is represented using a column vector notation, Kate or Bra, depends on the situation, in Dirac notation, in Hilbert space. And what is the Hilbert space? Hilbert space is a vector space where you see there is a unique property having an inner product, which enables you to apply the inner product to 2 vectors to return a scalar, which is different from that of a random vector space. Okay. Now, similarly, if you go for expressing the qubits in the form of vectors, you will see 0 state can be represented in this column vector form 1, 0, and 1 state can be represented as 0, 1. So these are the vector notation for these states. Either you can express them as 0 and Kate 0 and Kate 1, or 1, 0 or 0, 1 column vector. And so now state 0 is referred to as the ground state, and state 1 is the excited state. Now, if you just look what are the main features which enables or rather which enables the quantum computing paradigm to excel in terms of speed and performance, you see that these 2 features are very important. One is superposition. We just dealt with. That is superposition enables the combination or combination of one or more states together to generate a multiple number of states at the same time. So it is a combination of 2 or more states. Okay, superposition. That means you are able to combine or have at any point of time a multiple number of solutions combined together or superposed together. Very essential property which enables you to apply your parallel sort of operation on all these states differently on the different states. Another is entanglement. Entanglement is a property which generally gives rise to non-local interaction among bipartite correlated states. That means, for example, if you just go back to the previous slide, this is 0 is 1 state and 1 is 1 state. 1 is the 1 state. So you see, if you can entangle this 0 with 1 and then move 1 to a very long distance apart from 0. Okay. So, and if you go for measurement, now you see, initially at any point of time, you do not know whether it is a 0 or 1. So you want to entangle. First of all, if you entangle them, what does it mean by entanglement? Entanglement is these 2 states. When you want to entangle, they are highly correlated. Highly correlated in the sense, if you just take this one out of the entangled pair of 1 and 0 and take to a very large distance, for the time being, and then measure either 0 or 1, either 0 over here and 1 at the larger distance or a distance away. If you come up with the value of 0 for this state, okay, after measurement, the state of this, the value of this state will automatically come down to 1. That means measuring only one state will also yield the value of the other state if the states are entangled with each other. That means since the highly correlated and high level of correlation exists between the states, so whatever you do with one, similar to that of the twins. If you see for the twins generally they have similar properties, similar behavior, similar attitudes. So you see, if you just look at a twin, and if you just identify him or her as A, then the other twin automatically comes up to be B. So that means but otherwise, if you do not measure it, they will appear to be similar to each other. So similar to that twins, if you have twins, so you can just think it up like that. 0 and 1s are twins, they're entangled pair, and if you just measure one of them, you will get the value of the other at the same time. So I will be just discussing with another example. One a very good example I generally give in all the lectures and all the class, also in my classes. So let us now go to the in depth superposition. Superposition C is a linear combination of states. Okay. So given a state 0 and given a state 1, so they can be combined together. They can be made. They can be combined together by means of a linear combination with some values like alpha and beta, the probabilities alpha and beta. So alpha is the probability of having the state 0, and beta is the probability of having the state 1 after measurement. Okay. And this entire thing, actually, you see, I told you it is a wave function. It can be expressed as a wave function. So a qubit can be expressed as a wave function. So wave function psi can be thought of as a linear combination of 0 and 1, with 0 being present with a probability amplitude of alpha, and 1 being present with the probability amplitude of beta. Okay. So these alpha and beta complex numbers. And so you see alpha square is equal to is the probability of finding psi in the state 0, and beta square is the probability of finding the psi in state 1. That means when you go for measurement, this wave function psi will have a value 0 or 0 state, will come down to 0 state if alpha square is equal to 1 and beta square is equal to 0. Similarly, it will give a value of 1 if beta square is equal to 1, alpha square is equal to 0. So if beta square comes up to 1, you get only one state, because the other part becomes 0 because alpha square is equal to 0. So 0 into 0 state will become 0. Similarly, if you alpha square is equal to 1, you will get the value of 0 over here, and beta square being 0 into 1 state will give you 0. So these alpha square, the beauty is that the alpha square plus beta square will always be equal to 1. That means that because they are probabilities, so you know in the probability always they sum up to be equal to 1. So you see another thing. You see here there is another block square representation. This is a qubit, for example. This qubit is aligned in this direction in a sphere, and you see a single qubit can represent two values, 0 and 1, or 0 and 1 states. Okay. So you see the 0 and 1, or rather in the classical, you see once you measure a quantum system, you come out with classical values. Okay. Not the states will never remain as such. Will come with classical values. So let us suppose these are the classical values, 0 and 1, and you see 0 appears with a probability, and the probability of both 0 and 1 are same, about 50% each. Okay. So until they are measured, they will appear with equal probability. But once you measure it, depends on the situation, depends on the value of the probability amplitude, you will get either 1 or 0. Now, another very beautiful example is there, very good one to understand what is superposition. You see, Schrodinger cat is a thought experiment. You see, Erwin Schrodinger was among the pioneers, of quantum mechanics. He designed this thought experiment, trying to explain the quantum superposition principle in a better way. What is the user see? You see, this is the experiment where a cat is there in a radioactive box, a radioactive counter. Radioactive box. The box where there is some radioactive material, and you know the radioactive material decays with time. Okay, so there is a half-life concept. All these things are there. So this cat is housed in a chamber where there is a radioactive material. Okay, now. And this radioactive material decay, now a counter is there, Geiger counter is there, which detects a radioactive decay. Now once the radioactive material decays, finally if it comes, it goes down and down, depending on its half-life. These ultimately, and there is apart from this, there is a flask over there in the chamber which contains some poison. Okay. So and a mechanical architecture or mechanical equipment is there, which is tied up with the Geiger counter, controlled by the Geiger counter, which detects the radioactive decay. Now, once it decays, it is presumed that if the radioactive material decays with time, this hammer will be placed on this flask, and the flask will break. If the flask breaks, the poison will come out, and the cat residing inside will drink the poison, and ultimately she or he will die. The cat will die. Now the question is, you see, I told you that the radioactivity is a probabilistic phenomenon, quantum phenomenon. So you are not sure whether the radioactive, what is the half-life of the radioactive material, and depending on what half-life it will decay. So that depends on the half-life, and that's also probabilistic in nature. So if the radioactive material decays, the cat will die. Otherwise, if it does not decay, what will happen? The cat will not die. So at any point of time, at any point of time, without having any knowledge regarding the half-life and all these things, whether the radioactive material has decayed altogether or not, what you can do, if you just observe, if you open the chamber, you will see, what will you see? Either the cat will be dead or the cat will be alive, isn't it? But actually speak, but what about other parts? What about the other times when you are not observing? That means the cat is there, the radioactive material is there, it is decaying or not, you do not know, and also there is a flask of poison, which can be broken at any time, depending on the decay rate of the radioactive material. But since you do not know whether the radioactive material has decayed or not at any point of time, what will be the state of the cat, whether the cat will be dead or not? If the radioactive material decays altogether, the cat will die, that is fine. If it does not decay, cat will be alive. But at any point of time in between, what is the state of the cat? Actually speaking, if you think in this time, you see that the cat is both not alive, not dead. Or rather, you can put it in another way, both alive and dead. Now, is it possible, both alive and dead together? Yes. In the quantum, if you just think in this form, if you just go to the next slide, you see the cat can be represented in this form, where the alive cat is in one state with a probability of 1 by root 2, and the dead cat is another state with a probability of 1 by root 2, and you see the probabilities of both are equal, 1 by root 2, 1 by, why 1 by root 2? If you take the square of 1 by root 2 and sum up with the square of 1 by root 2, you will get 1. So the sum of the alpha square and beta square comes up to 1, and just suppose this is a 0 state and this is the 1 state. So at any point of time, the two states are superposed together, they can appear together. That is the beauty. Now, until and unless you measure it, until and unless you open the radioactive chamber means you measure it. Once you measure it, you will either find it in alive or dead, depending on the decay of the radioactive material. You do not know about that. So this is a very good experiment, or the thought experiment devised by Schrodinger to explain the superposition principle. I hope that I've been able to disseminate the picture to you, and to some extent it is now clear to you that at any point of time before measurement, you do not know what is there. It is a combination of zeros and ones with some probability amplitudes. So I told you that the sum of all the probability amplitude should be equal to 1, the alpha square plus beta square is equal to 1. And when actually this must be maintained always, because otherwise it is infallible. That means you see qubit is always normalized. That means alpha square plus beta square is equal to 1. Okay, now I told you if you attempt to retrieve the values represented within a superposition, superposition randomly collapses to represent just one of the original values. That means take the analogy of the cat experiment. Once you open the radioactive chamber, you get either a dead cat or a live cat. So that means it either collapses, the entire state of superposition collapses to either 1 or 0. Okay, when it is measured. Now again, on the block sphere representation of a qubit. Now a qubit can be represented as a vector in a block sphere, in a sphere rather. Okay. So you see, you can write, already have told you the psi is equal to alpha 0 plus beta 1 is the general representation of a qubit, or a wave function psi, where alpha beta are the complex numbers. And if you can represent it there, you can represent them in terms of real and imaginary part, like by introducing the term e to the power I theta by some sort of mathematical manipulation. You can write alpha 0 plus e to the power I psi beta I phi beta 1. Now this is some sort of trigonometric operation. So you ultimately come down with this psi is equal to cos theta by 2 0 plus e to the power I phi sin theta by 2 1. So if you just represent the wave function in this form, you see that actually you can interpret this in this form, that theta and phi are spherical coordinates. Okay, and the radius vector r is equal to 1. Taking a normalized qubit, then you can plot any qubit on the surface of a sphere as a vector like this. And you see the psi is here, aligned with the yz axis, and x plane is here. So this angle it makes with the z axis is the theta, and this angle, this azimuth is phi. And it is 0 state and the 1 state. So at any point of time, if this angle is 45 degrees, say, then it is midway between the two. That means in this quadrant. So actually speaking, it is a combination of 0 and 1 with equal probability. But in other positions, that probabilities are changing. Now, if this psi is aligned here, if the psi is coming over here, say, if the psi comes over here, okay. So you see, it is more close to the y-axis. That is the y-axis, rather, if it's more close to the 1, that is the 1 state. Now, if you just take this angle, and it is further apart from 0. So you see the probability of having the 1 value is higher than that of 0. So as it rotates or as it aligns itself on the log scale, you get the different states depending on the probability. Okay. Now I will give you a very one example of entanglement, a very beautiful example and very simple example. You just think of a story where involving Alice and Bob, two persons who once upon a time Alice and Bob lived in Australia. They grew up in their respective hometowns. Both are living in Australia and they are growing up from childhood. Alice and Bob, they do not know each other. Okay. Suddenly it happened that Bob met Alice and they fell in love with each other. Fine. Subsequently, they got married to each other. Now, this is very important. This point is very important. Subsequently, they got married to each other. You see, initially they were unknown to each other. Now they met, and after becoming familiar with each other, they married themselves. That means an event has occurred. They are married. Now they are living happily, obviously, but Alice got pregnant after some time. But during the course of time, also Bob had to shift to United States for his job, leaving Alice behind. So now, even you see, they were living in different hometowns. They were unknown to each other. In the midway, they came to know each other. They married. Alice got pregnant, and again they eventually departed from each other. That means they parted from each other. That means Bob went to United States. Now they're farther apart from each other. Okay. Now, after some time, Alice gave birth to a child. Another event. Alice gave birth to a child. You see, just think of those times when there was no mobile phone, no internet. And say, for example, there was no telephone at all. And there was no connection between Alice and Bob. So once Alice gave birth to a child, the noise of, the news of Alice giving birth to a child is not known to Alice, and not known to Bob, because Bob is farther apart in the United States. So only Alice and whoever there are with her, know that Alice has given birth to a child. That means Alice has become a mother. But obviously, Bob residing further apart, far away in the United States, do not know that Alice has become a mother. But you see, it is quite obvious that when Alice became a mother, Bob simultaneously became a father, no matter whether Bob knows the event or not. That means the state of Bob changes from not father to father. At the very moment, Alice becomes a mother. So this is you just see, if you just make an analogy with the quantum entanglement, you see Alice and Bob got entangled when they got married. This is the first event. They become correlated to each other. Now, when the property of entanglement states that when the state of one of the entangled states changes, the state of the other state automatically changes. So when the state of Alice changes to a mother, the state of Bob automatically changes to that of a father. Without having any formal communication between Alice and Bob, Bob becomes a father, the state of Bob changes to father, while the state of Alice changes to mother. So you see, this is because this is quite a good example where you can just relate with the entanglement. If you have two states, 0 and 1, which are entangled with each other, and they are entangled here, you take one particular state away to a very, very large distance, say, without any formal communication channel. So once you measure one state at any point, the state of the other automatically gets measured. So if you get the value of 0 state at any point of time by measurement, the state of one automatically comes up with another probability. So you see, that is the beauty. That means that is a very fast communication. As if you see in this example, as if the news of Alice becoming mother has been transmitted to Bob so fast, or faster than that of light, speed of light, quite lightning speed. Okay, that means this very fast communication is possible. You know, it is a theoretical concept rather, but then you see, you can visualize it like this, that the news has somewhat been transmitted to Bob, so that the state of Bob has changed. But actually, there is no transmission of news. By nature, Alice becomes a mother, Bob becomes a father. So since they are correlated with each other by means of the marriage. So this is an example where you can understand some sort of the features of entanglement. And these features are generally used in several aspects for developing quantum algorithms. Now, what is quantum measurement? Very important. Now, once you measure, what is the way of measuring something? What does the measurement process gives you or yields? You see that in classical mechanics, you see the position and momentum of a state, or let's say the state of a particle. Okay, at any particle at any point of time. But in quantum mechanics, the quantum state, it is a combined state, a superposed state, describes the system. Describes the system means describes the variable, rather you can think in that terms. So Then you see there is in the quantum state, you have all sorts of probabilities of different states taken together. It is not that you are only having a 0 and 1. It may be, if you are having a 2-bit qubit system, you will be having 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, 1, 1. Four states will be there. So as you move on to higher number of qubits, you will get more number of states. So they are all combined together with different probabilities in a Hilbert space. So what is the beauty? If you prepare a quantum system in a laboratory, now why this thing is very important? You are preparing a quantum system in the laboratory means in an isolated environment. That means it is free from any noise or disturbance. So you are ensuring an isolated and very, very, very cool environment where you are preparing a quantum system, that means superposing two qubits, two states rather. So obviously they will remain intact. It is presumed that they will remain intact unless some disturbance is made. Now when you measure them, that means when you use part of the system and go for measurement, the state collapses. You either of the state, that means the entire superposed state collapses to either of the state. Now the interesting thing is that if the measurement is repeated, you measure it, for example, at time t is equal to t, you measure it, you get you get a value 1. Say it collapses to the 1 state, not 0, 1 state. Say after t plus 2, you again measure it, you find that you will find 1 again if the quantum state is not allowed to evolve. That means if there is no disturbance or noise or external noise which disturbs the isolation of the system. So as long as the quantum state remains intact, you will get the same result how many times you measure. But the problem is if the preparation is repeated, if you prepare the system again, you try to replicate the system, subsequent measurements are supposed to give different results. This is why you see a quantum bit cannot be copied. You cannot make an exact replica of a quantum system because it is a purely random system and you cannot make an exact replica. It is not only a very interesting approach, but also it is a very disadvantage as far as the computing computing is concerned, because because at any point of time you cannot repeat or you cannot make a copy, you cannot clone any qubit to use it further, to reuse it. So that is the main disadvantage. That's why. And another thing is that you have to make sure that the quantum system remains intact and isolated. So these two things are given that you maintain these things, you will come up with the same measurement time and again. Otherwise, you will get different measurements in different times. That means since it is a random system, you will get different measurements at different times. So if you are, for example, if you now think of the practical utility. In a classical computer, if you go for addition of 1 and 1, you will always get 2. Whether you measure it in the morning or in the evening or in the afternoon. But if you go for a quantum computer, depending on whether you are maintaining the system intact or not, 1 plus 1 will give you 3 at one time, will give you 2 at one time, will even give you 0 at another time, because it is a random system. So then the question automatically arises, so what is the use of having all these things and all these webinars and all these things? Why are you studying this? So that is the main challenge before the scientist, to maintain the integrity of the system, maintain the isolation of the system. That's why the people are now fighting with each other. Companies are fighting with each other. Okay. Again, these things are not why, because I've already dealt with, because entire measurement depends on the probability, and the probability distribution is deterministic in nature. That's why you are getting different results at different times. Otherwise, you can have a definite result. It is not definitive in nature. That is definitive in nature because you are unable to maintain the system. That means you are unable to maintain the integrity of the system. If you can maintain it, you will get the same value time and again, even if it is a random process. But then there is no way out. You can copy it or clone it, and then the measurement at any point of time will be different, vaguely different. So what you can do, you can go for an average of the different observations and give you an average value of the output. That is not feasible in real terms. Now, last topic, last but one, quantum gates. Now, similar to the classical computing paradigm, you also have quantum gates, which are unitary operators. What is a unitary operator? Sorry, unitary operator U is 1, but the adjoint is equal to its inverse. That means the operators are reversible in nature. That means you see U adjoint is equal to U inverse. So how can you if you just write U adjoint, you will get U adjoint U. That means the operator is reversible. So whatever the operations you do in a quantum computing paradigm, they are reversible in nature. If you go for from input plus operation, the output will automatically, you can get back the input from the output by reversing the operation, which is not possible in a classical, because you see, for example, in a chemical reaction, all chemical reactions are not reversible in nature. But somehow some chemical reactions are reversible. So you see but all the operations in quantum computing are reversible in nature. Some example gates are there. Polygates. Polygate is also referred to as X gate. Is representative of poly X matrix given by this form. Anyway, I'll be just giving you some examples so it will be clear to you. And what actually X gate does? X gate actually switches the amplitude of the states 0 and 1. That means it inverts or rather reverses the 0 with 1 and 1 with 0. So you see, if you apply X gate on this 0 state, you will get a 1. Similarly, if you apply X gate on 1, you will get a 0 over here. So it just reverses the state of 0 and 1, okay, or the amplitude of 0 and 1. Similarly to the X gate, Y and Z polymetrics also are available of this particular form. These are used further. And another interesting thing is the Hadamard gate. It's actually a fundamental gate which is used for the superposition of the two states of 0 and 1. It's used to create the superposition. Okay, the gate is of this form. So these gates, because you'll be if you just go to some other material, you'll get more insight into these gates. But for the time being, it is not. I'm not going into the details because how to operations take place and how to use them. Because another thing you will be just touching upon how to use this gate. I will be giving an example how this Hadamard gate can be used, and you can visualize the entire thing altogether. So you see, just to have a flavor of the IBM Q experience or the IBM quantum computer, because IBM has given you or given access to the quantum computer by creating a portal of this form, HTTP quantum. This is you just log in over there. You have a circuit composer, or you can create some circuits. That is the quantum circuits. Okay. So I'll be showing you an example after completion of this slide, and these are some of the references which you can consult if you feel interested. And then, because one thing is very sure that quantum computing is the computing for the future. So it is not late to start now. You can always start, and if you start now, you will get the fruits in the near future. And thank you. I'm open to any queries you have. But before that, I'll be just going to the this quantum IBM QX just to give you an insight into how things actually take place. Let me copy this. Just hold on. I'm coming back because I'll be sharing the screen again. Let me close the sharing now. Stop sharing. So let me now share the screen again. Are you getting it? I hope you are getting the screen. Hello? Are you getting the screen?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
If you just put the URL over here and press enter, you will get the screen where you will ask me to sign over here. For the first time user, you have to create an account. Very simple. Similar to creating any other account, you will get a validation or a verification link in your email ID and all these things. It will take some time because just hold on because my internet is very. So you see, I automatically logged in. You see here, you on the right hand side, you see several tasks submitted by several users are going on. Okay. But here you see, if you just go to the left hand side, here you see circuit composer. If you click on this, this screen comes up where all the gates are there lined up over here. All the gates are lined up over here. Here you have the qubits. I hope it is visible to you. This is Q0, Q1, Q2 in this way, and this is C3. This is a classical channel. That means with the qubits, you can create a circuit, and then the output can give you the classical value. Obviously, at the classical channel C3. Now, in the default case, you see there is only this is a box pair. If you just go over here, you see a state 000. A 3-qubit system. Okay, 3-qubit system. The only the 00 state is there with the probability of 1. Okay, it is now aligned with the 0 state. So and the probability of having the 0 state is 100%. No other state is there. Okay, now if you take a, say for example, Hadamard gate and click it over here on Q0. You see, there are two states are coming up with equal probability. Now, if you go over here, state 000 with a probability of 0.5 now, and state 001, another state with a probability of 0.5. That means you have created a superposition, which is 0 state and 1 state with equal probability. Now, again, you see that if you come over here, you will get state 000 with a probability of 50% and state 001 with probability of 50%. I hope that means by using the different gates across different outcomes in terms of the block square, you can also visualize them in the form of block square, or you can also measure the probabilities, measurement of the probabilities of the different states in this particular form. Okay, where the different probabilities of different states can also, you can also use other the CX gate or other X gates also, you can also practice on. And this is the measurement channel, but you can measure it. If you just put it on the circuit, it will measure something and will give the output in the C3 channel. This is classical channel. C3 is the classical channel. Okay. And other channels are quantum channels. So our quantum inputs coming in and the quantum gets added over here to create the circuit, and the output will automatically come to C3. You will have to place a measurement gate over here. It will be, it will come down and give the value over the output over here, C3. Okay. So in this way, and you can also, not only that, you also can have a guided tool over here. You can get started with the circuit composer and you can build your first circuit, you learn quantum and all these things. And all the entire documentation is there. In fact, this IBM Q, IBM Quantum Initiative has come up with a implementation or programming platform rather, quantum computing platform, that is referred to as the QSkit. You can learn it and you can use Python to just use it to your advantage. Okay. So I hope that it is now clear to all of you. Now, anyone having any query can put down in the chat box. We can have a discussion. I would Dr. Day to just have some queries. There are several queries in that.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Bhattacharya, for your wonderful speech on introduction to quantum computing. I think our participants have enjoyed the session. Now coming to question answer session, I would like to request Dr. Prosenjit Dey, Assistant Professor, CSE Department, to sort out the questions and put forward them to the speakers. Dr. Prosenjit Dey, please. Prosenjit? Hello? Hello? Prosenjit? Please.
Okay, Prosenjit is not
okay.
Channel. So
okay. So you can.
I am asking the question.
Okay.
One of the participants asked,
hello, am I
how can quantum computer ensure cyber safety?
Pardon? What is the
How
question?
can quantum computer ensure cyber safety?
Very good question. I told you now, because the quantum computing can, because with the help of quantum algorithms, you can factorize large integers. Okay. So now people are, you cannot ensure. How can you ensure? It means you have to go for some mechanism where you can have something which cannot be broken down easily, isn't it? So quantum algorithms actually are, because they are not meant for blocking something, they are meant for creating something. So you can always devise your own algorithms, like quantum cryptography algorithms or quantum encryption, all these things. You can always have the quantum RC algorithm where you can have more security in terms of thwarting away the attacks and all these things. So it depends on the application you are using. Also, the quantum computing offers an alternative to handle with large values together simultaneously, and also obviously if you can use those features, you can make it.
There is another question. Can we implement these gates on classical systems, or do we need to simulate them?
As of now, whatever people are doing, like people are doing, they are using the quantum computing principles trying to emulate the entire system in the classical computers, using the classical computing paradigm. But then these are quantum inspired. That means it is a bridge between the transition between the classical paradigm and the quantum paradigm. But then once a quantum computer comes up like this, it is giving you an alternative or access to the quantum computing machine. So you can access the platform and you can create certificates, you write your own programs and can have an experience of the quantum computer. Even if you do not feel like having a quantum computer at home.
Another Mr. Kumar asked that, sir, you said quantum computer will give different answer different time. Then how can we know which answer is correct?
I told you that since the answers are random in nature, I told you the easiest way is to take a series of answers and then go for an average of the answers. Okay, or depending on the probability of the answers coming up, the answer with the highest probability always taken as the output, but that is not always feasible. Better what you do, you have to have a system which is very much isolated and very much rather free from noise. Then only you have a system where when you measure, go on measuring repeated times, you will get the same result.
Chitrasmita Banerjee asked how to ensure maximum accuracy in result obtained from quantum computer as in different state the request changes.
Can you repeat the question? How to?
No, it is already answered.
I just forgot to mention the photonic counterpart. That is how to use light, properties of light to devise a quantum computer in a that will be very viable and very easy. But however, the problem of having the isolated environment is also there. You see, light actually, whatever light we just look around, the daylight, the light from or gadgets, all these things, they are polarized in nature. Polarized means they are light actually the electromagnetic wave. So the light photons of the light are polarized in different directions across the entire 360 degrees. So at any point of time, all polarizations exist in the light. Okay, light comprises of several states of polarization. So that means you can think of the photons as qubits having different polarization states. So at any point of time, they are in different orientations, means they are in different states, multiple number of states due to multiple photons are there in the light beam. Now, if you just place different polarizations, what you can do, you can think of the system, light coming from a laser or a LED light, you can put a beam splitter. Okay, beam splitter will split the beam in two directions, and then you get two beams simultaneously, and then you put one horizontal polarizer in one path and vertical polarizer in another path. So after the polarizer, you get the vertically polarized light and a horizontally polarized light. So you will get two beams in two different directions. One can be thought as a zero state, another can be thought as a one state. So you get two qubits. You can now simulate two qubits. But the problem is you have to ensure an isolated dark environment, a vibration-free isolated environment. But that is a very low-cost alternative because the companies are also working in this direction, not only on supercomputing, but also they are using these photonic versions of the quantum computers.
Another question: can we use quantum computers in cloud computing?
I told you quantum computers in cloud. What is a cloud? Cloud is actually nothing because you are not having a computer at the cloud. Actually, you are having a collection of machines. They are forming a cloud like that. So obviously, not required at all because cloud computing is mainly meant for the storage, I suppose, because it is not meant for any sort of efficiency or that. Because several protocols are there which means for accessing how to do all these things. But computing is different thing altogether. Cloud computing is different and quantum computing is different always. But quantum computers are not meant for storage. It is only meant for making the computation faster and efficient.
Another question: how is cryptography applied in quantum computing?
Cryptography is not applied. The quantum computing principles can be applied to devise different cryptographic algorithms. You can come up with because new field has already come up, quantum cryptography. Lots of people are working in this direction. Because you can have the quantum, because what you are actually doing for any cryptographic algorithm, you are using a ciphertext and a plain text, isn't it? So what you are going to encode the text or encrypt the text using qubits. So the entire information is in quantum. Then you can use the quantum computing principles to then transmit, for encode, decode, and all these things can take place. So the entire algorithms comes up in the quantum domain.
Another participant asked that, as you said about the entanglement of states in quantum computing, is it possible to measure the chemical property of a molecule in excited state while the molecule is in ground state? And how far will be reliable?
Yes, we have quantum chemistry, quantum drugs, all these things are coming up. Quantum chemistry is a very rapidly emerging field because the orientation of different molecules after the chemical reaction becomes very complex to handle with classical computers. You can devise quantum algorithms, or you can have the quantum evaluation of this entire chemical reaction and can do things more easily compared to that in a computer.
One of the participants now said most of the time you see that people require master's degree to get into this field. Is there any way to bachelor students get recognized without higher qualifications?
I'm not getting the point. Anything related to quantum, I do not think there's anything.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Questions also there. How to live this Google meeting on YouTube? What software is needed? So beyond the scope of my knowledge.
How it increases the accuracy in machine learning algorithm?
Accuracy in terms of speed, in terms of fail-safeness, in terms of robustness. So these are the accuracy factors.
How can we make computations on superposition states?
Computations are already always done in superposition because initially you do not know in which state the qubit is. It is in a superposed state of different states taken together in a combination. So it is always all computations are done in the superposed state. Once you measure it, once you try to get the output in real time in the classical domain, you go for measurement, you get a single output.
Another question, quantum noise is very common phenomenon. How is this state handled?
Very important question. Quantum noise. This is a very quantum noise. Not only quantum noise, quantum error correction. Quantum noise is very because since you are dealing with the atoms and ions and phonons, so lots of noises will be the channel noise. All these things. What I told you, all these things will come up. So there is the main challenge to just come up and to channel the exact path. Just removing or thwarting all the noise. It is very difficult proposition. People are working very heavily on this part.
So how to erase previously stored information in quantum computers?
Pardon?
How to erase previously stored information in quantum computers?
You cannot make a copy. You cannot. Erasing means what? You go for a measurement. You are erasing the superposition. You are destroying the superposition state. Go for a measurement. You will get the classical output. No quantum states will be there. Further.
So what are the applications of quantum computer in medical field?
Medical field. I told you drug discovery. Drug discovery is coming up using quantum computing principles to go for the invention of different drugs, just combining different molecules because they are very complex in nature. The calculations can be done very easily.
So I hope these are the questions from the participants.
Their questions will be, I don't know that because the students are very much eager, interested, will come up with lots of questions. I am unable to answer all these questions within a short part of time. Maybe you can just direct your questions to the convener, they can come up, he can contact me later on.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you, sir. So now we are closing our question and answer session. So thank you once again, Professor Bhattacharya, for your wonderful, excellent session. A lot of questions also suggest that the participants have enjoyed the session. So at last, I would like to request Dr. Dey to formally give a vote of thanks and to declare the end of this webinar. So Dr. Dey, please.
So it is a very good privilege and great joy for me to extend a vote of thanks to Professor Bhattacharya and all the participants to make this webinar a success. We heartily thankful to Professor Bhattacharya sir for his wonderful, lucid technical speech and sharing his knowledge in the field of quantum computing. Sir, I hope you guided us in the right direction, and we appreciate that. Hope this will help our students and also the participants, those who want to do the research work in this field. You understand that you have taken time out of your busy schedule to deliver this webinar. Thank you again, sir, for your invaluable contribution. We are expressing our gratitude to all the participants to attend this webinar and to make this successful. And we also expect this kind of cooperation from your end in the near future. And also one thing I forget that is, Suman, please share your screen. Sir, Siddhartha sir, There is a token of appreciation. There is a e-certificate. Sumin, hello.
He's not there, perhaps.
Okay.
He is there.
Somen is here, but
Hello.
Somen.
Please share your screen and show the certificate of.
Okay. Let me just share the screen. Okay. Is it visible?
Yes,
Thank
it is visible.
Okay, okay.
So this is a token of appreciation set. We will mail it to you.
Thank you very much. And also, this certificate is not only for me, also to all of my scholars, including Tulika who made this slide possible, including Dr. Jay for inviting me, including all other scholars, my scholars who are working with me. They are insisting on me like anything. Even if I teach them wrong, they will think that it is right. Anyway, thank you very much. So hopefully,
Yes, sir. You are a true mentor, sir. Uh, Okay, sir. And these participants, dear participants, you can see in the chat box there is a feedback link, and you have to fill the feedback link to get the e-certificate. And please fill up the feedback form within 2 hours. After that, the link will be closed. Okay. So thank you again to all of you, all the participants. Hope we will do this type of webinar next time, and hope you also join in those webinars. Thank you, sir. I hope we will get you with another topic in another time, and we want your blessings for the success of our college and for success of our department.
thank you. Bye. Okay, bye.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, all of
So,
the participants. This is the end of this webinar.
okay, so dear participants, just you can see the feedback link. So you must have to fill up the feedback for getting your certificate. Your certificate, you can get your certificate within 2 weeks. Okay, so don't ask before that. So within 2 weeks, you can get your certificate. But please fill up your feedback form. So thanks you all once again. Thanks all. So let us close.
Without
Goodbye.
filling up the feedback form, you will not get the certificate.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So let us stop.